live now. I would just share the video because we don't have so many people seeing this.
So in the meantime, hi everyone. I will say how thankful I am for such prominent members of the community, so Be the Moon and Zinx, to join us for a discussion that is kind of the follow-up with regards to the discussion we had on Friday, with regards to the important metrics of a Bitcoin Treasury Company. So basically, buckle up because this session is a deep dive session. So basically, it will be the opportunity for us to dig deeper into, what's behind the metrics, what's the sense behind them, how it's used by, investors and community members. So, Be the Moon and Zinx, you will share also your vision on that, and basically have a more, layered analysis on each of the important metrics of a Bitcoin Treasury Company. So here's Daniela, our amazing chief of staff that will moderate the discussion.
Thank you so much, Valentin, and thank you so much, Be the Moon and Things to be here. I'm so happy to discuss with you about this subject. So, if you want, probably you can start. I have a question for you, Be the Moon and Think. I want to know which are the key metrics you are following when you are investing in a Bitcoin Treasury Company, or probably when you are following Capital B.
Yeah, if I can start, good evening everyone. There are a lot of metrics that I follow, but I think the few are key to follow. The most important one probably is upgoing Bitcoin per share. That's maybe an easy one, but it means that it's accretive in time. The multiplier on an asset, its value, of course. So what's the premium you pay? And one slide deeper is the months to cover it. So how many days or months does it take you before you cover the premium? Or actually it takes the company, because you don't have to do the work. And there are some other ones, but I don't know if Things wants to fill in here.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me, yeah?
Yes, everyone.
Okay, great. So I like to follow, obviously, Bitcoin BTC yield, in particular QTD, so for the quarter, because it allows you to measure the velocity of these Bitcoin treasury companies. How fast are they stacking Bitcoin, in the last 3 months? Yeah, so, and obviously, Bitcoin per share. I like to look at the MNAV, days to cover, MNAV as well. So, the things that Be the Moon has mentioned, I think these are the key metrics that I like to look at. But aside from that as well, is also, not necessarily a metric, but the team, how they're performing. Yeah, lots of decisions come into play when I'm looking at investing into a Bitcoin treasury company.
Great, thank you. Probably, Valentin, what we can do is to share our dashboard in order probably to people to see which are these metrics that Be the Moon and Things are following. And I don't know if you have something to add, Valentin.
Yeah, so basically, thanks for sharing that. As I said on Friday, because we began the Bitcoin metrics on Friday, I believe that most of what Zinx and Be the Moon said is absolutely correct. I mean, again, a BTC yield is of course the highest level of focus that we have at Capital B since November 5, 2024. I would add the caveat that even though I agree that obviously QTD, as Zinx was mentioning, is very important, as it shows the velocity on a specific quarter, and shows the ability of a Bitcoin treasury company to seize the current market conditions to convert premium into net asset value. I believe that it's also as important to have a look at the year-to-date data, and that's, I mean, on BTC yield, but also on other metrics, in the sense that, and that's my strong conviction, Bitcoin Treasury Company play is a long-term play, and in the sense that you will want to look at Bitcoin Treasury companies at the light of their ability to deliver substantial amounts of operations and deliver substantial amounts of shareholder value over a long-term period of time. So basically, it's very important to have a look at QTD in a, let's say, velocity-oriented way, and then have a look at year-to-date in a value-oriented way. So I think that both complement very well.
Honestly,
I don't know what's your vision on that.
Yeah, the funny thing with capital B, of course, is that with the Bitcoin convertible bonds, they can surprise you every single day of the week with something you don't expect, and that's because the debt is not functioning in a currency risk way. So they can build the book up
Yeah.
almost limitless. So if you look back at March this year, you guys went from 40 Bitcoin to 620 Bitcoin in one operation. That was a 14x. And
Exactly.
it was about, I think, twice the share count. So that's why the 700% Bitcoin yield was progress. So in my own overview in Excel, I measure the quarter to date, the year to date. For every quarter, I measure the months to cover, days to cover, the PCV. But every time I look in my Excel and I think, okay, this is Q3, it's 18% Bitcoin yield, that means 12 months to cover. But last quarter, it was 96 Bitcoin yield. The quarter before was 709, and they tell us or don't tell us that they're working on major things. So you don't really know what Bitcoin yield you put in for a forward-looking expectation. And that keeps it interesting, but if you look back at what happened in this year alone, there were multiple instances that almost the whole premium was covered in one operation. So quarter to date is good to look at, but it doesn't tell the whole story, in my opinion.
Can I just say that the reason why I look at QTD more is just because, of course, year to date is very important, but if a company was starting with 2 Bitcoin and then they go to 8 Bitcoin, their year to date BTC yield is going to be 300%. So because these companies are very new and they're starting with low amounts of Bitcoin, it's hard to really, if next year for capital B, you start looking at the year-to-date yield, I think that would be more useful because you're starting off from a higher base. But of course, the Bitcoin convertible bonds allow capital B to have these, zigzag up and down BTC yield figures for the quarter. So, look, right now Q3 it says 18%, but if you announce, an operation in Q4, which, may or may not come, obviously is going to blow that out of the water. So, perhaps in capital B's case, because you guys have these special types of operation, it's more important to look over the quarters rather than just in the last quarter. But yeah, for other companies, I would definitely say it's a bit more useful. But yeah.
So that's very interesting. So basically, um, you both said something that is very interesting. You talked about premium and ability to cover, especially Be the Moon. So basically, for those in the space that are not familiar with this metric, we are making reference of the days to cover or months to cover MNAV, which is basically the amount of days that would be needed, considering the historical pace of BTC yield increase, to convert the premium into Bitcoin net asset value. And so basically, our current number is 77 days. That takes into account the historical rate of BTC yield, but it touches upon something that is even deeper. If we go, one layer deeper, is days to cover MNAV is only important with regards to the MNAV it aims to cover. And my vision is one of the things that you mentioned, B, and also touched upon Zinx when you talked about massive operations, is I think that most of us, just consider BTC yield as a component of MNAV, but as I said on Friday, I believe there is way more than that. Basically, I think that MNAV prices or is in a way of pricing in, because I believe that we are in a full MNAV discovery phase, but it's aiming to price BTC yield, of course, the velocity of accretion for the shareholders and the expectation of future accretion for the shareholders, but also it aims to price the ability of a Bitcoin Treasury Company to be able to deliver massive scale operations, financial operations, in the sense that, as you said, in March, we were at 30.7 MNAV and able to convert 12 points of MNAV on a single operation. So basically, it's pricing in the ability of a Bitcoin Treasury Company to deliver just that. On the complement side, I believe also that it rewards, as you said, the ability of a Bitcoin Treasury Company to have financial engineering that is both very accretive for the shareholders and protective for the company. So as you mentioned, the Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds, which we introduced. So basically for the people that just joined, so Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds are 0%, 5 years maturity bonds that are very easily convertible by the bondholder and convertible also by the company in the last 2 years. And the debt is fully denominated in Bitcoin, which means that the capital structure or the debt structure is fully immune to BTC volatility. So if and only if capital B doesn't perform within a high range, which is 5 years, so very long range, the reimbursement will be done in BTC, which means that regardless of where BTC stands, whether it is at 1 million and 1 cent, the debt impact would be the exact same for capital B. So basically, I think on and on, the MNAV, prices in the velocity, but the ability for a company, so a Bitcoin Treasury Company, to deliver this velocity while being, long-term oriented and, credit protection oriented. So I don't know what's your view, Be
And
the
I
Moon
want
and Jinx on that.
And I also have probably another question for Sync Moon. Is now in this time that all the MNAV are contracting, probably I want to know your opinion, because we have seen, for example, Metaplanet having now a very contract MNAV, and they are doing very great. So probably the market is not also recognizing the hard work they are doing. So I don't know if you have any comments about this.
I have multiple visions on the MNAV, and I think the most important one is that you should track your own MNAV, because the MNAV of the capital B now is 2.5, but what was the MNAV when you bought the shares? Because that's, for you as an investor, the most important metric. Because let's go in one layer deeper. So if you buy shares today, you get an intrinsic value of 664 Bitcoin per share. The MNAV is like 2.5. That means that if you buy now in fiat, you break even on your Bitcoin investment at about 1650 Bitcoin per share, because that's the sats per share times the current MNAV. So your own break even, the MNAV for your own investment, it makes sense after you think about, can they reach 1650 sats per share? And if we put that in a calculation, you can see it's about 10,000, 10,500 Bitcoin if they have to do it at the current MNAV, because it's less accretive. So if you think they, capital B can stack in 12 months 10,000 Bitcoin diluted by the current MNAV, then your in a very safe environment. If you don't think you guys can pull it off, then you're not in the right environment. So I think just looking at the MNAV that's decreasing and compressing, of course it gives a fiat loss, but your Bitcoin base hasn't changed. Actually, you guys kept stacking, so my Bitcoin per share went up. The question is, can you reach my break even in a time that is normal, or is it long, or is it short, and what's your own expectation on that? So MNAV now is sentiment, in my opinion, but the most important is what's your own MNAV when you bought, and when do you break even on your investment measured in intrinsic Bitcoin per share, so at a MNAV 1.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's exactly how I measure my investments as well, because of course, you know, the MNAV of the company is, you know, whilst it's good and it's important for them to raise, you know, an accretive level, for the individual, obviously, what only matters is when you bought the stock. But as you said, right now, if someone bought into Capital B, all it would take was, which I don't think is anywhere near, you know, difficult for the company to reach, you know, 10,500 Bitcoin. After that, it's just complete upside. And if you look at the long-term vision of Capital B, you know, by 2033, they want to get to 210,000 Bitcoin, which is 1% of the Bitcoin, you know, supply. You know, all of that is upside after, you know, you get your MNAV premium back. And I think it's a compelling investment, personally, not financial advice, of course. And to answer your question, Daniela, about MNAV contraction, yeah, we've seen this across, you know, the entire space. But what's particularly interesting for me about Capital B is that on a fully diluted base, it has the highest MNAV out of all, you know, the serious Bitcoin Treasury companies. And to me, that shows that the long-term investors, you know, that are supporting the company have complete confidence. You know, they've not capitulated, they've not sold out. I've personally have never sold a Capital B share. I've only bought. And I think it's because, you know, what you guys are building here is, you know, very attractive for the investor. Me personally, I think the Bitcoin denominated convertible bond, once I fully understood it, I was like, wow, round of applause. It's amazing, that level of innovation from the company, when you realize that there's no downside risk, really. It's a win-win for both the company and the investor, you know. Yeah, exactly, and the shareholders, because the worst thing that happens is the company just has to give the Bitcoin back in the unlikely scenario that it doesn't convert. So very, very impressive. And yeah.
Thank you. Alexandre, Valentin, they are happy because they work so hard to innovate and create these instruments that now is inspiring new other Bitcoin Treasury companies. For example, we started with the Snuggleware. Now a very similar but now different way to use this convert, and probably other Bitcoin Treasury companies could inspire and use it.
I'm surprised that more companies haven't done this, because, you know, I'm sitting there, you're just thinking, you know, even if your MNAV goes below 1, you can still use this Bitcoin denominated convertible bond, charge a premium, because it does deserve a premium, because it's no downside for the investor. You know, Bitcoin is the hurdle rate, and yeah, it's beautiful innovation.
Yeah, so to build on top of what you said, obviously I agree, no? But just digging deeper into the instrument, I believe it's a very interesting solution also, as I saw Be the Moon on X proposing this as a solution for Bitcoin Treasury companies that have an MNAV below 1, which I believe can be a solution that is obviously important to consider, as you have a 30% premium, long duration rate, maturity date, And so you have the upside of stock performance, of your ability to capture this MNAV that you would have created through the premium, to convert it into a net asset value. And then as an investor, you have the downside protection of Bitcoin, which is in a sense, downside protection against an asset that has, 30% ARR with regards to a convertible bonds that has a 30% premium. So basically, if you spread it over 5 years, then chances are that BTC will at least maintain part of its ARR, and then the probabilities of you having downside protection is lower and lower. So basically, as I quote things, yes, I believe that's a win-win situation. But more than that, it's the repricing of how financial engineering and capital raises can be done on a Bitcoin standard. And I think that's really also important for Bitcoin treasury companies as a whole to seize. And not only Bitcoin treasury companies, frankly, I think that, I mean, in some time, your local business, your local lawyer, your local a butcher will come down to BTC denominated financing, BTC denominated products. And so I believe that obviously pricing debt and pricing financial instruments based on BTC and BTC IRR is obviously a very interesting subject to dig deeper.
I
And if I
have a
can add
question.
on that, sorry, Daniela.
No,
And
Videmun,
if I
go ahead.
if I can add on that, the thing that I think most shareholders don't even realize, another genius part of this Bitcoin convertible debt is there is no hedging. So when you have the fiat convertible debt like MSTR had
Yep.
and GameStop had, you see an immense drawdown in the share price because the institutions that subscribe to the fiat convertible debt, they hedge their position to go gamma trading. And with the Bitcoin convertible debt is long only. You don't have any hedging. You don't have a price downward on the stock. You actually only have upside because it's accretive to the stock. It's accretive to the net asset value. So it has all the upside and no downside. So it's really misunderstood how genius this was thought of, in my opinion.
I I believe it's gonna age like fine wine. This product, this convertible Bitcoin denominated convertible bond is really something that, Capital B can really be proud of, because once you fully understand it, and like Be the Moon said, they don't have to cover. There's no covering of your risks. They don't have to hedge the other side, so there's none of that drag. And you know, in this space in general, obviously a lot of the innovation has come from Saylor himself, and you know, but so this was the first real sort of new thing outside of strategy that a Bitcoin treasury company has done, which I think is a big thing because it gives you such a huge confidence, in the team, especially for international investors. Because, to be honest, I didn't know really anything about French equities, Euronext Paris, any of these things. But when you see, this sort of innovation coming from the company, it's like, okay, well, that's worth it. What's gonna come in the future? It's very exciting, and yeah, I think you guys should really be proud of that.
Thank you. I have another question for you. It's more about the metrics. If we come back to these metrics, I just want to know how often are you following these KPIs? Are you following these KPIs daily, probably just weekly,
Every day.
every day? Okay. Do you think that, which probably are the KPIs you're following every day?
All of them. I've got this tab, this because it's a beautiful analytics website. I've got this open every single day, and I just refresh it. You know, at the beginning of market open, market close. Yeah, I follow all the metrics.
Yeah, to build on top of what you said, so I mean, we are glad that obviously the dashboard is useful to you, and I believe useful to many of us. So courtesy also of MicroStrategists for the design. But I believe that those metrics obviously should be looked at every day, but looked at in a simultaneous way, in the sense that, well, days to cover MNAV doesn't make sense unless you understand what is MNAV. Then BTC yield doesn't make sense unless you know how it is used as an engine to cover the premium that the market gives you. So basically, I think it's as important as being educated on the metrics in themselves to understand what's deep behind the calculations, how it's done, what is the time horizon for some of them. For example, days to cover, you can do it historical as we do, but you can also do year to date, 20 days rolling also I've seen, which are all very interesting but says different things on the Bitcoin Treasury Company. And so I believe that well, it should be taken as a whole, meaning that um, it's like a music partition, really. It's really understanding how all those metrics come into relation to explain how Bitcoin Treasury performs, for sure, and also how it is valued by the market and based on which area of valuation. As I said, based on BTC yield, expectation of massive operations, expectations of highly relative products, as we talked about with Bitcoin denominated debt. And so I believe all of that is info that you can find behind the metrics, but having understood how each of them interact with each other. So Bidemoon, I don't know if you agree with this statement or if you have something to complement.
I fully agree on your statement because I think most important advice is people need to zoom out and see what already happened and what is likely to happen in the future if we just wait and relax. And like things, I cover all metrics, but I do them in my own Excel. They're all automated. And I track some things that are not on the dashboard, like maximum ATM possibility, open capital, trans 2, end date of trans 2. So I like to do some mathematical operations by myself, but yeah, we should see it as a whole. And people tend to forget what happened in the last 9 months. It's a crazy journey already. I'm in since May only, so. Yeah, when I got in, you guys had 620 Bitcoin on the balance sheet and 700% Bitcoin yield. Today we have more than almost 4 times that, and we're just getting started. So we need to zoom out a bit, take some time, take the longer approach, and have faith.
Can I just say as well, like when it comes to the metrics, what I like to do is play around with the BTC yield, year to date, from Q1, Q2, and that can change your days to cover metric quite substantially. But obviously, I know it's hard to look forward, but we know that Capital B has these special operations going on. So, it's hard. So what I like to do is I like to sandbag it. So right now, the Q3 BTC yield is 18.1%. If you put that into your calculation for the days to cover MNAV, it obviously, goes far higher. But obviously, if the special operations are going to come, it can just blow it all out the water. So you just have to, make different projections. That's what I like to do as well. So, at different MNAV levels of dilution at different MNAVs. Obviously, the higher the MNAV, the more accretive the raises are going to be. But yeah, I'd say you just have to look at the overall picture and make your best guesses.
Yeah, I agree. To build on top of what you said, I think that so I would complement what you said on the ability to do big operations, which basically you can obviously see on the past operations that we did, as you said, Bidemoon, in the March and May operations, which by the way were both Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds. But it's also the ability to do it in an accretive way to the shareholders. And I insist on that because, again, MNAV doesn't mean anything if you don't have the ability to cover it. And so, and each operation that we do at Capital B, we ask ourselves before the operation, is it going to be accretive to the shareholders? And basically, BTC yield is one of the things, but obviously pricing conditions and all the, let's say, parameters of the financial products that we issued or consider issuing, go into this, filter. And I believe it's a very important, it's a dynamic to have for each and every Bitcoin Treasury company, in the sense that raise capital as fast as possible, yes. Raise as much capital as possible, yes. But the very important part that we have our full focus on at Capital B, and I believe all Bitcoin Treasury companies should do the same, is focus on being as accretive as possible for the shareholders, because shareholders are the basis of what makes a Bitcoin Treasury company what it is. And I believe that obviously the ability for a Bitcoin Treasury company to demonstrate that it's able to, um, conduct major scale operations and, being able to obliterate target, as Alexandre mentioned several times already, is on and on very important for shareholders, investors, and obviously for Capital B as a whole.
I'd just like to add to that. I think there's a special, unique situation with Capital B in the sense that there's quite a bit of short interest on the stock. But because you have these special operations, it's like, especially because it's Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds that doesn't need hedging to the downside, it creates a unique opportunity to get a crazy short squeeze. So these shorts, who are shorting the stock, they could wake up the next day and there's been a special, operation, and the BTC on the balance sheet has gone up by 50%, and then now you're in a very sticky situation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I cannot obviously comment on short squeezes, but obviously, yes, the ability of a Bitcoin Treasury company to, overnight grow its BTC holdings by 50%, 100% or more is obviously part of the what Alexandre likes calling the unpredictability factor, which I mean is obviously one of the factors that enters into MNAV and into Bitcoin Treasury companies' valuation, is the ability for a Bitcoin Treasury company to surprise the markets. And by surprising the market, obviously, it's also surprising the short sellers. So basically, obviously, the ability of a Bitcoin Treasury company to, have this sense of unpredictability is in a way very valuable. And obviously, a Bitcoin Treasury company needs to deliver on this unpredictability and deliver, as I said, large-scale operations and large-scale accretive operations.
Talking
Yeah,
about this war, Valentin, I don't know, Videmoon and Sing, if you have any comment about this, the fact to be unpredictable. What do you think about this? Because, for example, now we start to see in Bitcoin treasury companies that, like, every Monday, every Tuesday, they start to show the new purchase or the new raises. What do you think about this?
can I tap in the short position first? Because Valentine can't say anything, but maybe I can. The current situation is still that Valion has 1.92% shorts open, so that's about 2 million shares. And Cube could have open still 680,000 shares, because we don't know, because it's below the 1.5%. But it's about the same as one daily volume. So if hypothetically a major operation would occur, I think they don't have time to close 2 million shares in a day, because it would be so hectic for them. So just to add on the perspectives, that's still a possibility, what Zink said.
Yeah, I know that Valentin can't talk about it. But I made a post about the short situation, and I would think it would be an interesting situation if there was a special operation timed around the US OTC listing. And Adam Back, he liked my post, so I think he finds that situation very interesting too. That's all I'm saying.
Who doesn't? Going back to your question, Daniela, I think for a lot of investors that don't fully understand what's going to happen with Bitcoin Treasury companies and or don't have the patience to zoom out, it's very it's an extra worthy thing if a treasury company does a capital raise every Monday, like clockwork, because you see Bitcoin per share go up, you see net asset value go up, and you should see the share price go up if the MNAV stays the same. So I think it's valued by a lot, but I don't think that's the only way to do it, because if you ask me, I'd rather do one major operation every 6 months than do 26 small ones every week, because the impact is probably larger if you do one every 6 months. The only downside would be if the market doesn't see you do it, your MNAV could contract more, at least hypothetically, and it would be less accretive to do the major operation than do 26 small ones, probably. But we see that's not true, because MetaPlanet also compressed like a bag of chips under pressure. So, yeah.
Just to add to that, I think personally, I like the mix. I like that when I'm with capital B, that you never know what's going to happen with these special operations. But I do think, because of how sentiment driven Bitcoin treasuries are, and for the MNAV, I think you would need regular contact with the community more than every 6 months, just because the attention span of investors is getting shorter and shorter. And if people, if they don't see a buy, in a month, they start asking questions and these sort of things. So I like, even if it's small buys, as, Capital B have been doing, and then working in the background, these big special operations, I think the combination of the two, personally for me, is the best way to do things. And, I'm always looking every Monday for an update, every Tuesday in the morning, and I go to the Twitter page and I see if there's an update or not, and I personally like that, me personally.
I love the element of surprise today, because the ATM announcement normally is on Tuesday, because there couldn't be ATM last
True.
Friday.
True.
So we did it Monday,
Well,
because
we
Friday was
like
no ATM
doing some
day.
surprises from now and then, yeah. But if I can add on what you said, things which is very interesting. Basically, that's also the, let's say, the aim of the next gen investor relations that we are launching since last week with our regular spaces and communications, is the way that to understand that, as I said multiple times in posts, well, I think that we are in a S curve squared, meaning that only less than 5% of the population is exposed to BTC, and in this 5%, even less than 1% knows about Bitcoin treasury companies. So basically, um, investor relations is obviously about communicating on your operations, your BTC acquisitions, and so on and so forth. But it's also about participating to a stronger network, participating to a stronger Bitcoiner community, and also participating to Bitcoin mass adoption. And I believe this last point is very much undervalued, because frankly, most of the investors that we are having important meetings with nowadays, well, frankly, they are not exposed to BTC, and they are not aware of Bitcoin treasury companies. And frankly, uh, Bitcoin treasury companies sometimes are the only way for them to get exposure to BTC. So we are, I believe, in a very interesting phase where chances are that general populations and TradFi investors get exposed to indirectly to Bitcoin through BTC treasury companies before getting exposed to BTC itself. And well, we can feel it with Alexandre when talking to investors, obviously, but I think that's a more general trend that we see popping up, and we are, with very prominent community members that are participating to this mass adoption and to general public for understanding the metrics behind Bitcoin treasury companies. But I believe it's also the role of a Bitcoin treasury company to, power fuel this adoption S-curve squared.
Absolutely. I was going to say that most people in France and Europe in general, their exposure to Bitcoin is very likely to come through Capital B. Once Capital B, uplists to Euro, Next, Paris, and is included in all these index funds, and people will be passively investing into Capital B, which will obviously be their proxy, to Bitcoin without even knowing it. And I think that's going to be the way that most people get their Bitcoin exposure. It's going to be through Bitcoin treasury companies like Capital B.
B, if you want to add something on top of that.
No, I fully agree. I think it's going to be eaten from the inside out. So a lot of people will get into an ETF that's more and more will have Bitcoin treasury companies in the ETF that will just grow because Bitcoin has a higher CAGR than the normal stock. So the proportion gets bigger and bigger, and they get more allocated and more allocated. And they probably see their returns go up, and then they will look into it, how that happened, and maybe then get into Bitcoin. So I fully understand what you mean here.
Yeah, and if you think about that, I talked about, often about early squared and S-curve, adoption S-curve squared for Bitcoin treasury companies. But in fact, this can very likely, be reverse adoption curve S squared, in the sense that, Bitcoin treasury companies adoption, whether they are direct, as you said, things, or indirect. We talked about the S&P 500 for a lot those last few days, but basically this could very likely trigger a wave of mass adoption for Bitcoin itself. So basically the S-curve would reverse, and as I said, Bitcoin treasury companies would, in this obviously scenario, power fuel the mass adoption for Bitcoin as a reserve asset for the world. So again, it's a very interesting time that we are witnessing, and I believe that, even though we are talking about probabilities and possibilities, we'll have an answer quite soon in the next, I would believe, 1 year, 1.5 years.
I have another question, probably for you, Sing, because I know that Videmoon is fully focused on Capital B. What do you think about all this comparison that sometimes we can see on X about the Bitcoin treasury companies? That they are comparing not only metrics but a lot of aspects. Do you think that probably is useful, or do you think that probably there is like room for more Bitcoin treasury companies such as one?
Good question. I think we all have a home bias, and I think what you will see is each of these companies will have a strong, the best companies will have a strong local support. So I'll be on, so my first investment was in Strategy. They were the first Bitcoin treasury company. I was in Metaplanet and Smarter Web before I came to Capital B. And obviously, you understand your local market a lot better. You understand these sort of, you're more willing to take a certain risk with your home company. So, I was much more comfortable, for example, investing in Smarter Web early on than in comparison to Capital B, naturally. However, I think with time, me personally and other people in the space, you realize that just because a company becomes a Bitcoin treasury company, they are not all the same. Okay, there's, for me, how I do it is I would only like to invest in one company in one capital market or one jurisdiction. So in the US, you got Strategy, they're the clear winner. I think it's a winners takes most market. There can only be one major company, or a company that takes the lion's share of the local market. And so it needs to be a company that has enough Bitcoin on the balance sheet to eventually tap into the local fixed income market, because that that is the pie. That is the main, squeeze of this whole thing. So you've got the US, you've got Japan, you've got the UK, Europe, and Europe has a lot of mandated funds that can only be invested in European companies. And for me, I like to compare Capital B to its competitors in its local arena, in its local jurisdiction. And I think it's very obvious, me personally, that right now Capital B is the leading company within its jurisdiction. It's a rich capital market, France and the Eurozone. So that's the reason why that I would invest in Capital B, and that's why I have a position.
Yeah, you talked about tapping into fixed income markets, and I believe that's a quite relevant comment in the sense that I think what will you said winner takes most, maybe, but what's sure is that winners will be the Bitcoin Treasury companies that will have demonstrated high ability to seize the, frankly, hundreds of trillions of equity, credit market, monetary fund market through all ranges of products. We have seen obviously strategy that is paving the way with Strike, Strive, Stride, and Stretch. Metaplanet now that's aiming to launch the prefs. And well, I believe that again, one of the key success factor for a Bitcoin Treasury company is to be able to address multiple markets, multiple investor profiles at the same time, and also, of course, I repeat myself, but in a way that is the most accretive for the ordinary shareholders. So basically, I believe that again, the ability to tap into those markets is obviously one of the factors that will make the winners takes most, as you said, in each jurisdiction, but also globally.
But isn't that exciting that we are yet to see what Capital B have to offer in this regard? I know the company is very innovative with the Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds. I just can't wait to see how Capital B aim to tap into this fixed income market. And I'm sure it's going to be, something that's very innovative, and we're all going to be like, wow. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I definitely think, in each jurisdiction, especially with the mandates, and there's trapped pools of capital that can only come to Capital B. Of course, other European and other French, but, they don't have, the proof of work that Capital B has with coming with these new innovations, being consistent, being very active with the shareholders. As you can tell, I'm quite bullish on Capital B.
Videmoon, I don't know if you have any comment or probably something else to add.
Now, for the comparison, I don't really compare, but I do like to look at trajectory of Metaplanet, just because in a mathematical way, the day since start, we follow the exact line that Metaplanet has followed. So we don't know how long Capital B will hold on, because Metaplanet is at 20,000 something Bitcoin now, but they are like 200 days older. So I'd like to compare where we might be headed if we could see a same trajectory. For instance, at Capital B is 307 days old. We have 2,201 Bitcoin. When Metaplanet was this age, they had 2,100 Bitcoin. So if you map them out, I like that comparison just to see where we might be going, but it says, of course, not that much. And the other thing to compare is only to learn from other Bitcoin Treasury companies that are ahead. So what is Strategy doing? What does Metaplanet do? Which instruments are they using that we could use? But I'm not really busy with comparing Capital B to SYZ or to, because I think there's room for more, and I cannot do research on all of them.
I agree with that, and that's why I don't invest in more than one company per jurisdiction. I think Capital B and Smarter Web, they're not competitors. Capital B and Strategy, they're not competitors. Capital B and Metaplanet, they're not competitors, because ultimately you're going to be eating into different different capital markets. Smarter Web is not going to be trying to tackle the Japanese fixed income market, vice versa. So when it comes to comparisons, for Capital B is anyone else in France, anyone else in the Eurozone, and I think it's pretty obvious that Capital B is the leading company at the moment. So yeah, I just want to say one more thing actually that Be the Moon mentioned about the accumulation race. I think at the same stage of development, Capital B has more Bitcoin than what Metaplanet did in their same stage of development. So of course, Metaplanet, it went on a crazy run and they accumulated a lot of Bitcoin recently. But in the same stage, after the same amount of days, right now, Capital B is ahead of Metaplanet. It's close though.
Tomorrow they
Yeah.
ain't. It's until today.
Damn.
If I may add on top of that, you talked about competition. Obviously, it's a virtuous competition. But what's more important is that, again, the you talked about the metaphor of a pie, but in fact, the pie of capital, as I said, is tremendous. Hundreds of trillions in equity, credit markets, and monetary funds. So basically, our full focus with Alexandre every day is how to find the most innovative and optimized, accretive financial instruments to tap in the deepest layers of each of those capital pockets. So basically, I think that's one thing that every Bitcoin Treasury company should focus on. Obviously, there's some a comparison, but we leave comparison to tremendous analysts and data analysts, as some of you are surely in the X space. But what's most important is to focus every possible second, days and nights, on your own capability to turn MNAV into Bitcoin net asset value, and it brings down into your ability to again develop innovative financial instruments, tap into big capital pockets, and within those capital pockets, being able to do substantial operations that are able to obliterate targets. So fully agree with the points that you both mentioned.
Probably before finishing, I just have a question for you, because when we were building this dashboard, we have a meeting with Adam back in Prague, and I was so lucky to drink an orange juice with him and Alexandre. So he gave us an advice. It was to show the prices in BTC, the price of our stock in BTC. I don't know what do you think about this, because when we see the price in BTC, probably this can change the view. I don't know what do you think about this. Adam, he mentioned us that he's following the price of our stock in BTC.
Well, definitely. I think ultimately that's how you should be measuring your returns, right? On a Bitcoin standard, it's about getting more Bitcoin. We know fiat is very volatile, and I think that's why it's very important to understand these metrics, things like Bitcoin per share and, Bitcoin yield, because ultimately that's why we're doing it, to get more Bitcoin. And me personally, that's how I'm measuring my return. It's all denominated in Bitcoin anyways. So, the fiat price is temporary, it just fluctuates up and down. But if I'm getting more Bitcoin in return, then I'm a very happy investor. And as you can see, you can clearly see that Capital B are constantly increasing the Bitcoin per share and growing the amount of Bitcoin that I've, invested into the company. And, I think, everyone who's a Bitcoiner and understands Bitcoin should be denominating their returns in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I fully agree. I do the same. I measure my wealth in Bitcoin for a couple of years now, and actually do it in 3 ways. So I do it on an intrinsic level, so Bitcoin per share times the shares that I have. I do it on a break-even level, so I measure my own MNAV when am I break-even, what's the yield on my investment. And I do it on a fiat base, so if I would sell all shares now, how many Bitcoin can I buy back? So that's the way I measure my wealth, but it's all Bitcoin denominated. It's not in fiat.
Yes, and I think that's a possibility, which is coming increasingly into a probability that every capital market in the world will be denominated in BTC, meaning that we'll not talk about the equity market, the credit market, the monetary funds market, the real estate, and so on and so forth in fiat terms, but in BTC terms. And that's why I think, well, when we say acquiring BTC, the more BTC possible, the fastest way possible, this is way more than just a sentence. Is the conviction that, well, Bitcoin is replacing the world, and that the mission of Bitcoin Treasury Company is actually to bring shareholders what is better than having Bitcoin, which is having more Bitcoin, you know. And so in that sense, I believe that, well, having a look at the prices in Bitcoin terms is obviously a first step, a very good first step, to get also educated and exposed to what Bitcoin, what part of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin exposure that you have per fully diluted shares, as you said, Zinks, but also to understand how the whole financial system works with regards to Bitcoin. And I believe that once you understand that, well, the Bitcoin Treasury Company play becomes even more obvious, frankly.
Absolutely agree. And before we go, I just want to say that I'm completely impressed with you guys as a unit, as a team. Valentin, Daniela, Alexander. I think it's very. You guys need to be seen more by more people, because I've always said that Alex, you know, after Saylor, he's the most impressive speaker about this whole thing. He understands Bitcoin treasuries and the mission very, very well. He talks about Bitcoin yield and the MNAV, and he understands the interplay better than anyone else other than Saylor himself. And I think your recent initiative to be active in the community, it may feel like hard work now, because I think the time, look, 8 p.m. in Paris, that's bedtime.
It's still early squared in BTC world.
Absolutely.
We don't have time in Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. But you guys are working hard, and I think this is going to pay dividends when we get that MNAV expansion, especially into Q4. And people really appreciate it. It's something I've been watching, and I appreciate you guys interacting with the community, and keep up the hard work. I'm a very happy shareholder. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can only fully agree with everything Zing said. I think the Capital B team is by far the best, maybe except for Saylor, of course, who's the founder of everything. But it's amazing how you guys think, act, communicate, but also the financial engineering and the financial knowledge that you guys have. It's a different level. So congrats on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't know, Valentin, you have something to add?
Well, I will add on top of that, obviously, that you guys are very important and are an integral part of what Capital B is. I strongly believe that the success of a Bitcoin Treasury Company is also part of the community that interacts every day, and we see every interaction on X, on Discord, and other media every day, and that's really precious. And I believe that, well, the success of Bitcoin was due to Bitcoiners, and the success of Bitcoin Treasury companies will be partly due to the community members. So we really appreciate to have such prominent figures as you both are, and some that I see in the X space are, and every day participating to spreading the word, and again to getting along the BTC Treasury companies S-curve squared. And well, we hope that it will live up to the expectations, and we are focused every day on increasing BTC per share over time.
Yes, thank you so much. So have a good, I don't know, night, good end of the day for you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's been a good one.